Good afternoon, Year 6, and your topic lesson for this afternoon is, of course, me, myself, and CSI, and we are looking at a science-based lesson today. And in particular, we're going to look at inheritance. And inheritance has two meanings. It can mean that you have gained or received property or something that belonged to someone who has passed away. And it also means inherited in that you develop and are born with characteristics of both of your parents. So, for example, the colour of your eyes, the colour of your hair, the shape of your nose, those sorts of features, and also other aspects of your personality as well. So, whether you're musical or whether you're artistic, those are the inherited features and characteristics that we're going to look at today. And our learning is to explore what inheritance means, to be able to identify inherited characteristics that are passed on from parent to offspring. Offspring is just another word that we use for children, family, young babies. To develop our understanding of how inherited characteristics can lead to variation, and your assessment is you will investigate the characteristics that you have inherited from your parents by closely examining their photographs and your own and recording the evidence. So cells, chromosomes, DNA and genes. We're not going into this in too much detail today because that is a later lesson, but it's going to be helpful that you know about the building blocks of life, what makes us who we are. So cells are the building blocks of all living things. Every living thing is made up of cells. Amoebas have only one cell. So a creature that is called an amoeba only has one cell, but as humans we have trillions of cells that make up our DNA. So we'll look a bit more closely at them. The nucleus of a cell contains chromosomes, which are made up of DNA. DNA carries the characteristics that we inherit. It is located in two places in the cell, the nucleus and the mitochondria. DNA can replicate and make copies of itself. When cells divide, each cell needs to have an exact copy of the DNA in the old cell. Genes are short sections of DNA that contain specific information. This is often called the genetic code. All the genes in the whole cell are called genome. So this is what we start with: chromosomes, DNA, genes. And that's what makes us who we are. So what does variation mean? What causes variation? So the difference we're looking at is inheritance, the characteristics we get from our families, and adaptation. So inheritance, these are the characteristics that are passed on to offspring, to the young, to the babies from the parents. So it could be eye colour, skin colour, hair colour, height, build. So those sorts of inherited characteristics. Adaptation is slightly different. Over many generations, a species will adapt to its environment because the animals with the most successful characteristics are most likely to survive and pass these characteristics onto their offspring. So in the wild, animals live and humans have adapted over time as well. So if one of the environmental features changes around them, a creature, an animal, will have to adapt to that change. If it doesn't adapt to the change, it will most likely die out, become extinct, as we're seeing happening in the world today. So, for instance, a bird that had a longer beak to get to its food might adapt over time and end up with a shorter beak so it can get into smaller places to get food. So these adaptations occur over time, they don't just occur overnight. So, and it ensures that then the species can continue, it doesn't become wiped out or extinct. Inheritance. When we talk about inheritance, we often mean things that are passed on to us when one of our relatives or friends has died. Inherited items are sometimes houses or important or sentimental objects. Okay, so the difference between inherited characteristics and inherited objects, items, is that these are concrete objects that we can see, hold, or belong to. And if someone in your family or close to you passes away, then sometimes you get a little memento that was theirs, that has a sentimental value and you keep forever. So that's what an inherited object is. Inheritance. In science, and this is what we're interested in, inheritance refers to the genes that are passed on from parents to offspring. When we refer to inherited characteristics, we tend to focus on physical characteristics because of these are easy to spot. Okay, so inherited characteristics that are easy to spot, again, is your eye colour, your hair colour, whether your hair is curly or straight, whether you're tall, whether you're short, the other way around, those sorts of things. But we also have inherited characteristics that include abilities such as taste and smell. So we inherit those characteristics as well. So if you one of your parents has a very good sense of smell, you might inherit that very, very good sense of smell. And also things like artistic ability. We tend to be able to draw better if one of our parents is more artistic, or we might be able to play an instrument a lot easier if one of our parents is musical. Right, parents and offspring. Can you match the parents and the offspring, and then have a think about how did you match the parents and the offspring? What are the inherited characteristics that you could see? Just stop the video here and have a talk with someone in your house about how you know the young belong to their parents. What is it you can see that automatically what matches them up? Their inherited characteristics. So stop the video here and have a go at that and a talk about that for me. So, welcome back. We're just going to go through a misconception alert, something that you must understand in order to understand how DNA works. So while offspring means a child, the young, the babies, it does not mean that you are only offspring when you are young, when you are born, when you're a baby. You are always offspring of your parents. You are always their child. So the inherited characteristics that you inherit from them are part of your DNA for life. They don't go away when you start to grow up and become an adult. They are there, part of you forever. Even when you are a grown up and have children of your own, you are still your parents' child. So inheritance and variation. So let's have a look at them. How can inherited characteristics, similarities between parent and offspring, result in variation differences? Well, the majority of living things are the result of reproduction. So they have two parents, mostly. There are insects, animals that can reproduce without two parents, but the majority of animals in order to reproduce need two parents. You inherit the characteristics from both parents, but the way they combine makes the offspring unique. Unique meaning that they are only for that person. The inherited characteristics can combine in different ways, which is reason why siblings inherit the same characteristics but are not identical to each other. So you have siblings, brothers and sisters, and you have the same parents, but you might look different. So one of you might have dark hair, one of you might have blonde hair, one of you might have green eyes, one of you might have brown eyes. So you're not identical to each other. It's just that your inherited characteristics are different, but you are still the product of your parents. You are still their offspring. Even identical twins that share the exact same combination of DNA are not 100% the same. This is due to the fact that genes develop separately when the twins are embryos or during later development. So even identical twins do not have 100% the same DNA. Right, today's independence learning task. You're going to create a pictorial representation of your inheritance. Stick a photograph or draw your parents in two boxes next to each other, and then below, draw or stick an image of yourself. There is an example on the next page. Then investigate the characteristics you have inherited from your parents by closely examining their photographs and your own. Write down what you think you have inherited from each parent. So I'll go into that just after I've finished going through the slides. So on the slide, the next slide, I have an example of what your task can look like. So you can have a photograph or an image of both your parents and underneath an image of yourself. And then you might write what you have inherited from your father and then what you've inherited from your mother, the characteristics you've inherited. And then you can extend the task by adding your siblings, brothers and sisters, and what characteristics have they inherited? Are they the same? Have they got the same colour eyes as you? Have they got different colour eyes than you? Have you got curly hair? Have they got straight hair? Or are you really quite similar? So that's what your task is today. But I'll just show you briefly. So a title, my inherited characteristics. Okay, and then if you're able to get a photograph of one of your parents, both of your parents, or if you draw them, that's fine. You have them together like so. Excuse my drawing. So draw your parents. You're also amazing at drawing that. You probably do a much better job than me. Then your mum, obviously the length of your hair isn't an inherited characteristic because we grow and we cut our hair. So that's not an inherited characteristic. Everyone okay? So we give Dad blue eyes. Okay, so then we can label them. And then you can draw yourself in that box. Okay, or stick a photograph of yourself in that box. Then, depending on how much space you've got, you can do it underneath or at the side. I'm going to put Dad's characteristics. And then I'm going to start on my dad. I inherited my wavy red hair. So I actually did inherit my hair colour from my dad, not from my mum. So what did you inherit from your dad? I also inherited the shape of my nose from him. Okay, and then you can list the other things, and it might be that your dad is quite arty, and you've from him you have inherited the ability to draw beautifully, and mum's characteristics. Okay, and then you can say from, which should be a capital letter by the way. My mum, I inherited my brown eyes and the shape of my lips. Okay, so think about what you inherited from your mum. Then, when you've done one for you, maybe you can have a go at then drawing another box or two boxes or three boxes. I'll go back to this one actually, and do your brothers and sisters, and see what you inherited that's similar and what you inherited that's different. So it might be that, like I said at the beginning, that your hair colour is slightly different. One of you might have curly hair, one of you might have straight hair, one of you might have blue eyes, one of you might have brown eyes. You might have the same shaped nose though. So this is your task for today. So I look forward to seeing your work and reading about it. Bye for now.